Rock and roll doggy.
Sort of a musical journey, really, you know? No, it's a musical journey.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Rock and Roll Doggies. This is our podcast. It is two lifelong friends breaking down music that's been important in our lives. My name is Jason Acquisto, and this is my friend since we were teenagers. His name is Don Pardue. What's up, Don?
Nothing.
My man. We are breaking them down. All the U2 albums in order. It's the whole catalog. And we've gone through 6 albums, counting Rattle and Hum as a studio release there. This is the 7th studio release. And this album is 30 years old. You believe that? It's Achtung Baby, the 7th studio album by U2, produced by Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno, released in November 1991. Now, Don, jump in here if you feel like it. We all know what the sound of Achtung Baby is. So go ahead.
Oh, it's the sound of a foreman chopping down the Joshua tree.
That's awesome. So where were you in 1991, and what was happening that this was very important to you personally?
I was 3 weeks away from being married when this was released. I dove into the album because I was obviously a U2 guy. I didn't really fall in love with the album until the mid-90s when the wife became the plaintiff.
Okay.
So it's deeply personal, and we can maybe touch on that later. But I do remember, though, I remember standing in line to get this at midnight when it was released. I got back to my apartment, and you had left me a message that said, "I've got the album."
Really?
Yeah, I remember walking in, seeing the little light flashing, holding the album, holding the CD in my hand, hitting the button, and you said, "I have the album."
Really?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love hearing stuff
Yeah.
like that. It was a new musical direction, of course. It was incorporating new kinds of sounds and new attitudes. They were no longer the earnest, spiritual, world-saving quartet. They were kind of facing a little bit of criticism. And I think, we talked about this. Maybe they went too far with their kind of their image from before with Joshua Tree, which we love, and Rattle and Hum, which we also love. But did they go too far with taking themselves too seriously, and then, a little too much navel gazing, a little bit too much preening and posturing? I think they realized they had kind of.
Looking for ways to save on your energy bills? AES Indiana has you covered. From smart thermostats to home energy assessments, we offer simple solutions to keep your home comfortable and your costs down. AES can help you save money and energy with kits, tips, rebates, and more. Visit aesindiana.com/ways to save to learn more about how we can help you save money. AES Indiana, helping you discover real ways to save.
Okay, maybe we need to be a little self-aware and see we kind of became parodies of ourselves there. So they began to be a little more self-aware and to be a little bit more conscious of the way they were being perceived. And this thematically came out as Achtung Baby, darker, more introspective, and at times more ironic, a little more flippant. The whole presentation is different. Don, what was your thought when you saw that happening?
I didn't process all that quite that way in 91 or 92. I think it took maturation on my part probably to see where the band was really going with this. What I appreciated in 91 or 92 is that, hey, this doesn't sound anything like the Joshua Tree. This doesn't sound anything like Rattle and Hum. And the one thing that I admired about the band was how they would always test the limits of where they were going musically. The Unforgettable Fire sounds nothing like the Joshua Tree. And the Joshua Tree sounds nothing like Achtung Baby. This band really changed drastically its sound and its image, really, from the mid-'80s to the mid-'90s, perhaps more so than almost any other band I can think of. So
Absolutely.
that's what I appreciated is, hey, this band is giving me something fresh and something new and really something to ponder in a way that I hadn't experienced before with this band.
Well, that's for sure. And I think they backed themselves into that corner.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't lay it out and say, okay, we're going to become this, we're going to be this really biggest band in the world. And then we're going to be a little bit too full of ourselves. And then we're going to pull it way back and be grungy. And no, I mean, this is where they found themselves. And, you know, what do I know about being a rock star? But this is where they were. And they're like, okay, we're going to flip this, because what else can we do? We can either double down on the Joshua Tree, keep the ponytail and all of that, or we can get the joke and tell people that we get the joke. Okay. Yeah.
I remember in an interview with Bono where he's sitting back in that coat with the glasses on, and he says, "I'm learning to be insincere."
Yeah, that's perfect.
And I don't know. I don't even know that. I don't know if a lot of people got that, but I mean, their use of irony here in this, on this album, and in particular with the stage presentation of Zoo TV, is just, it's really fantastic. This is their most artistic, quote unquote, artistic album that they've ever done. It is I think it's an artistic masterpiece. And without getting too far ahead of myself, I think it's the best thing I've ever done.
No problem with that. The breathy pretentiousness and the groaning and the Joshua Tree, the earnest, you know, pontificating is gone. They're no longer, in his words, the big overblown rock band running amok. You know, new sounds, new thoughts, the chopping down of the Joshua Tree. I wrote down words like just freestyling, dirty, dysfunctional, desperate, experimental, cacophony, electronic, ironic, messy, trippy, dark, very, very chaotic. This album was nothing like what we expected. And in the moment of 1990 and 91, and we thought, oh, U2, we think we know what that is. And this is definitely a successful reinvention because it was a complete reinvention.
Even had I not enjoyed the material, I would have admired this band more, in spite of perhaps viewing this material as being, mediocre.
Yeah. What if it had been
hey, it's
right.
it's not up to U2 standards. In spite of that, I would have still deeply admired the band for venturing out this far, because this is what I want from artists. I want artists who are going to test the waters and continue to head down different avenues. And hey, you know what? Even if Achtung Baby didn't work, you know what? You gave me something new.
Yeah.
You're not content with the status quo.
Right.
And I appreciate that. Of course, I appreciate it a lot more now because I love Achtung Baby.
Well, two things. For every Pet Sounds that's out there, there is an unsuccessful attempt to become Pet Sounds, like to be this next big thing, to push into creative genius. Just because you need to do something creative doesn't mean it's going to be a success, but you admire the artist for trying and for pushing that way. And also, if you're an artist, if you're a rock band, a creative force, you better be several steps ahead of me as a fan, as a listener, as the audience. I better not quite get it every single time. You should be ahead of me artistically. You should be surprising me, or else you're just, I don't know what an example, or you're just doing the same thing, recycling the same sound over and over. So
Boston.
I don't want to say Boston. Okay. So buzzwords on this record, according to, I like Boston. According to Brian Eno, were dark, sexy, industrial, and words that were not allowed to be reflected were polite, sweet, righteous, and earnest. So that's what Brian Eno said about it. Great production. Didn't even sound like what we thought Brian Eno and Lanois usually sounded like, because they're usually a lot more
atmospheric,
melodic, ambient.
One thing that I don't think can be understated is, yes, the album has a chaotic component to it, but there was a lot of chaos that was going on with the recording of this album. Not only, they were recording it in Berlin and 91, which was a very, chaotic town at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But the band was in chaos because they couldn't find a sense of direction.
Mm-hmm.
Bono had a great quote. And I think before I get to the quote, there was some concern that this was it for the band because they couldn't find a musical direction. So that it was, they were going to, pondering, are we going to break up because of artistic differences? And Bono said this, he said, quote, "You have to reject one expression of the band before you get to the next expression. And in between, you have nothing. You have to risk it all." So they went away from they shifted away completely from the Joshua Tree and didn't know where they were going. And in that median, that middle area, in the middle, they had nothing. And I'm sure that was a very frightening place to be. Fortunately for us, they exited out and gave us a masterpiece.
Well, you got to tear it all down to build it back up.
Right.
And this is what we got out of that process. And it was painful, chaotic, like you said, the backdrop of the fall of communism in Berlin and all these layers of being the last decade of the 20th century. And, all of this anxiety and wondering what's next in terms of the band, in terms of, technology was starting to become more prevalent in our lives. And, just everything was kind of on the verge, if you will, there. I just feel like that's where the whole thing was born out of, that atmosphere. And listen, no mistake, this album, if Berlin has a sound, this is it. I've never been there. I would imagine this is what it feels like to me.
Well, it's an album that is influenced by Edge's flirtation with techno music, industrial rock, a lot of German musical influences on this album, stuff that most of us don't listen to.
Musical German.
It's a unique album. It's unlike anything they've really ever done. Just can't say enough about this album. It's deeply personal. Again, it's as artistic as anything they've ever done.
So let me jump in here with this opening track, Zoo Station. Thoughts?
It is a great opening track because it immediately, if not lyrically, it immediately jumps out at you and says, guess what? This is unlike anything else we've ever done. You know that from the first 5 seconds of the track. You're drawn into it by, I think, if you've listened to this album for the first time, you're drawn in 1991 of thinking, wow, where are we going here? Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what the band was looking to achieve. Mm-hmm. And they achieve that musically, but Bono achieves that lyrically as well in saying, I'm ready for the gridlock. I'm ready for the deal, ready to let go of the steering wheel. So Bono's lyrics also echo what the music is saying. And that is, guess what? We're taking our hands off and just rolling with the flow. Everything now is more spontaneous, less calculated, and it's so different than anything we've done before.
It was intended to make listeners think that the record was broken or mistakenly not the new U2 album. Yeah. And that's how it sounded. It sounded so rough and raw and just jagged. And, that the lyrics that just punch out, like, let go of the steering wheel, giving up control, giving in to the chaos and, madness, the losing control, the willful let go. Listen, you know what? I know I've been Bono up on a high plane, giving you the wonderful visions of the, and it's like, look, It's like John Lennon famously said one time, is that when people used to come up to him in public and start to ask him questions, he's like, look, get away. I don't know. I don't have the answers. I'm just a man. So that accent is just a bonus for you. But that was the way I think. Maybe that's part of what Bono was thinking here, is that he's just saying, look, I don't know. I'm just like everybody else. This tension, not the wide open spiritual freedom promised and delivered on Joshua Tree, not this wide open desert plain and this soaring through the clouds at the beginning of the record on Joshua Tree, Streets Have No Name, and the video too, the whole thing. This is grungy, urban, train station and dirty Berlin. And, what's happening? I've got my face pressed up against the glass. You talk about an anxious train ride. It's so crowded and so claustrophobic. We're on the verge of something here, and I'm in the train and I'm going for this ride. I don't know where it is. I don't have the steering wheel, all this stuff.
There's a lot of action in this first track. So I don't want to unfairly compare it to, say, the opening track of the Joshua Tree. If you look at what he's saying, I'm ready to duck. I'm ready to dive. I'm ready for the laughing gas. I'm ready for the gridlock. I'm ready for the shuffle. I'm ready for the deal. I'm ready to let go of the steering wheel, ready for the crush. I mean, there's a lot of action going on in this song.
Violence.
So it kind of feeds into that imagery of chaos. There's a lot of stuff going on, and he's ready to dive into that chaos.
Yeah, and the same way that Where the Streets Have No Name opened and set the tone for what that album experience is going to be. This is setting the tone in a completely different way. And you're right to compare those, because it is exactly what you're going to feel for the next 40 odd minutes.
Yep.
I love that because gridlock to me is just,
that's a nice,
such a strong word there. And look, we're in for some shit here. Okay. I don't know what's going on, but this is not 1987. Okay.
Right.
And it might as well be 100 years later, because it's all different. And what you think, and what is that graphic that we just looked at before we started the podcast recording? We were looking at the picture they used to put up on the stage behind them in their concerts on Zoo TV. Everything you know is wrong. And that's the mantra. Everything you know is wrong. I love the track. I think it's a great opening track because it sets that tone. And I'm like you. It took me by surprise. And I'm like, what? Oh, I love it. Sure, I do. I didn't know. I mean, it turns out that I do.
Right. But it takes, U2 understands their audience. They understand that, and I think Bono even made this comment, that we're not worried about the pop kids. The real U2 fans will come along. And I think that's his way of saying, you know what? The U2 fans are smart enough to be able to understand what we're doing here, and they're going to latch on to it. And as someone who's always appreciated irony, I mean, I love this stuff.
For sure. And this is a joke that not everyone got. And
a lot of people
still don't.
And
that's what it should be. Listen, if you're an artist, if you're a rock band, if you're a creative force, I expect you to be way ahead of me on things. I expect you to be 2-3 steps ahead of me, the listener, the consumer, in terms of, oh, it's a statement. Oh, I see what they're saying now. It shouldn't be ABC 1, 2, 3. I get it. It's obvious, because then it becomes this banal. It just becomes that pop disposable bubblegum.
And this album, more than anything they've done, this album holds up better in the current times.
You think it could be released in 2021?
This could be released in 2021, and it would do very well, because sonically and lyrically, it fits in so well with what's going on now.
It doesn't sound out of place.
It doesn't sound relevant now. Even they were so far ahead of their time.
We hadn't even gone through grunge yet when this came out.
Right.
Much less the rest of the 90s. So imagine before 9/11, before OJ, before all these benchmark events. This is 1990 freaking 1, and it still holds up.
Yeah, this is before AOL and Prodigy and CompuServe.
Listen, man, the Minnesota Twins were the world champions. I mean, what world are we living in here?
Right.
1991. This is before the Maddox, Glav, and Smoltz years.
That's right.
Joe Torre is managing the Cardinals. What the hell?
Bono did say this around about this time. it's much more reflective of the times we're living in, when people are no longer looking for the truth. We're looking for instant gratification. Now, at the risk of jumping ahead, I think that's kind of a statement that he made latching on to track 2. But if you look at it globally, I mean, that's so appropriate for where we are now in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
This album was so far ahead of its time.
Yeah. And yet still appreciated at the time. Nevertheless, it does hold up. And so here we are.
Track 2, even better than The Real Thing.
Love it.
When my heart is where it's always been, my head is somewhere in between. Give me one more chance, let me be a lover tonight. You're the real thing. You're the real thing. You're the real thing. Even better than the real thing.
It kicks it up a notch. The tempo increases, and you're on this ride. You're in that train car in Zoo Station. You're getting on board, and this thing carries you along. The high energy of this song is just like an adrenaline rush. And, you know, The Edge does some different things musically. It's a musical journey on this record than before. And this guitar tone on this song is just so pure. It's so good. It doesn't sound like the Joshua Tree. It doesn't sound like that echoey kind of,
Ambient
right?
landscape. Yeah. We've mentioned this before, that when we started out, we talked about, this Boy album is, didn't really realize that Adam Clayton and Larry Mullen were kind of the stars of that album. And I think we even said that about October. But we get to this album, and there is absolutely no doubt who the star of this album is. Edge is, this is Edge front and center.
It is. It's an Edge album for sure. And and musically, sonically, I think you're exactly right. And then the other side of that is that we've all heard that it was during a time he was going through the breakup of his first marriage, and that was the basis for a lot of the songs and a lot of the themes here as well. So Dave Evans is all over this record.
He did say this, and I quote, "I was disappearing into the music for a different reason. It was a refuge in a way. That approach didn't completely work. I wasn't really in a good positive headspace. I was running away, I suppose." He kind of ran into the music as a way of escaping personal trauma. And fortunately, I guess for us, his trauma gave us some darn good guitar.
For sure.
Throughout the album.
What do you think of this? That thematically, even better than The Real Thing, like The Real Thing, this idea, the spiritual ideas and ideals of Joshua Tree, are we saying that the reality of life is that we can live in this modern world and that is better than The Real Thing? This superficiality of modern consumerist society is better than The Real Thing? Is it an ironic take on saying that, well, hey, we've got this modern society, it's even better than The Real Thing? And is it just kind of self-referential thing that, the spirituality of Joshua Tree, that was a real, genuine thing, but hey, this is even better. Look, we've got everything we need. You know what I mean? Is it a modern world kind of black comedy kind of take on that?
I wouldn't put it past them. I don't know that I would buy into that completely, but at the same time, I wouldn't refute it, because there's so much of that goes on the album. And there's so much of that in particular that goes on with Bono and his stage persona. Yeah. And I mean, you get into Mephisto and all that stuff.
This could just be a fun, clever play on words,
It could be. But, I think if I were to sum up this album, I would say it's an album of broken love, but I think there's an undercurrent there, and it's not overt, but there's this undercurrent of there's spirituality in this album that hangs out below the surface. And this may be one of those songs where that occurs.
We all heard the lyrics of "The Sun Won't Melt Our Wings Tonight." And it's a very common reference, commonly used reference to Icarus who flew too close to the sun in the Greek mythology, and his recklessness and defiance of limitations and his own demise, right? So that syndrome in life, business, politics, whatever, characterizes leaders or significant people who initiate, hang with me here, overly ambitious projects that come to naught, causing harm to themselves and others in that process. So the choice to include that turn of phrase in there is deliberate. Now, is he saying that because this project, this persona that he created with the Joshua tree, that it comes to naught, that it turns out to be that he's nothing more than a normal man, and that he's kind of breaking down that whole thing that was built up before. You follow me? Not that it destroys everyone and everything, but that there is that sense of, hey, look, you know what? I was flying too close to the sun. And there's something there that to me is fascinating and just so self-aware.
That's an interesting take. I don't know if it's true or not, but I think the fact that you can look at this piece and reach that conclusion speaks to the depth of the album, the depth of the songwriting. You know what? You may be right. That it may be that was his intent. This is a very intellectual album. It's not like I still haven't found what I'm looking for. It's not like Pride in the Name of Love. It takes a lot of thought. You have to dig into this album. So you know what? You may be right.
There's something there to, and I don't need to know exactly what it is. I also love this line. I love the way it's delivered. This is just for the sake of words. We'll slide down the surface of things. That really is a nice summary. The irony of the album, and more so the irony of the tour. And you know what? We can separate the two, but we can't separate those too far, because the tour complements the album so well, probably more so than anything they've ever done in their catalog. The stage show is an artistic expression in and of itself. You're honey child to a swarm of bees, gonna blow right through you like a breeze. Give me one last dance, we'll slide down the surface of things. Just so nice. I love that. I love the fact that he's using the word things, and it's an ordinary word, not descriptive. That's not it's a superficial word. It is, and it's not a thesaurus word. And it's just, we'll slide down the surface of things. It doesn't matter what it is. We'll just slide down it. I just love it. It's a thing. It's almost a throwaway, but it's really not. Yeah. It's intentional. Right. This brings us to track 3. 1. Oh boy. This is a deep one. One of the best songs they've ever recorded.
Is it getting better? Or do you feel the same? Will it make it easier on you now? You got someone to blame. You said one love, one life, when it's one need in the night. One love, we get to share it. Leaves you, baby, if you don't care for it. Did I disappoint you, or leave a bad taste in your mouth? You act like you never had love, and you want me to go without. Well, it's too late tonight to drag the past out into the light. one, but we're not the same. We get to carry each other, carry each other. Whoa.
This album, again, recorded in 91, wasn't an album that I fully absorbed, I think, until I started going through a divorce in 96. And I remember when we're going through breaking everything up. So what's your stuff? What's my stuff? Who keeps this? Who keeps that? And this song came on the album, came on the radio during all of this. And I remember stretching out on the floor and weeping, not just crying, but just profusely weeping at the moment while this song was being played on the radio. Again, it came on the radio. It just did. There's this song is absolutely one of the most personal songs, even to this day, that I've in my entire catalog, with or without U2, no pun intended. It just still just, I mean, I've listened to it a lot lately, and it still takes me back to almost a dark place. It's not an easy album for me to listen to because it takes me places that I've probably tried to exclude from my forethought. And this is one of those moments that always comes back to me when I hear this song.
It's a masterwork.
Oh, it is.
In so many layers. I mean, there are people who have deep, dark, huge, heavy life experiences that are attached to it, like yours. And then there are people who have maybe less dramatic experiences attached to it. And then there are people like me that just, I think I was breaking up with a girl at the time, and it was like a blah, blah, nothing like a divorce, but just kind of, I remember
that, actually. I remember that. I do. It was, that was December 91. So you were there for the wedding. And I remember, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, again, I would never put it up, alongside yours, but still, we all have our levels of experience on this song. And I think it's universal because it's about love and loss. It's about love and pain. It could be about family bonds, marriage bonds, sisters and brothers. He says it seems to be almost improvised at the end. Many interpretations of this. Many people say, "Oh, this is about a married couple or a romantic couple." I've heard the story that it's about. It's intended as a father and son, and that it's related to AIDS, and that do you see? It's blood. It has the same blood and all that. Like, I get that. There could be multiple interpretations of that, and still, it doesn't really matter specifically what that relationship is. The universality of the love and loss here is just so masterful, and it's so minimal. Okay, he doesn't try too hard here.
Yeah.
He's not using Joshua Tree platitudes here.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Something that has always jumped out at me. We get to carry each other. Carrying each other is a privilege. It's not a duty.
It's a privilege.
It is a privilege. We don't have to carry each other. We get to carry each other.
I think it's the same thing. It is a piece of genius right there. That is absolutely critical to the greatness of this song. Love is a temple, love the higher law. And then we get to carry each other, not have to, but love is an act, and it is a privilege, not a right.
This is just so good. This song is just.
That is so high. That is so high on the chart of stuff, right? I mean, whatever you want to say, it is it.
This is, in my opinion, the best snippet of a U2 song in their entire catalog. You say love is a temple, love a higher law. Love is a temple, love the higher law. You ask me to enter, but then you make me crawl, and I can't be holding on to what you got when all you got is hurt.
It's unbelievably strong. It's so good.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not bombastic. It's not like he's painting a picture. It's just so direct to the point. And in the middle of all of this irony and this symbolism that exists in the album, on track 3, boom, it's right to the point.
Yeah, and it is. It's not like it's in the middle of a stadium with this ultimate moment of revealing the tablet of truth, and no, it's just real quiet, man. It's
And
just
they
real
don't
simple.
they don't it's a real direct song. They're not engaging in a lot of irony and a lot of symbolism here, although it can be, interpreted in different ways. The music is very stripped down. They're also not looking to woo you with a lot of funky sounds and so forth. They step back. So you've got Zoo Station and even better than the real thing, which are great, sonic departures. And then all of a sudden, boom, track 3 is a step back sonically
Mhm.
and a very direct approach lyrically.
Yeah, the bottom falls out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because the ending of Real Thing is just it's just one of those great endings that kind of leaves it hanging in the air. It's a cold fade, and it just kind of hangs there, and then you get those drumsticks, click, click, click,
Yeah, yeah.
and you're way down. You're way down there.
Have you come here to play Jesus to the lepers in your head? What a
I mean,
great line.
we could go through this.
Golly.
This could be a podcast
This is
in and
a-
of
in
itself.
and of itself,
This
right?
is a masterworks class in studying the great literature of our time.
How many people, though, it's so relatable, but yet it's not hackneyed. You act like you never had love. Did I disappoint you or leave a bad taste in your mouth? Too late tonight to drag the past out into the light. These are universal themes, but it's presented in such a passionate
Mhm.
and unique way. It's masterful in that respect, I think.
Yeah, it's so true. And the way he sings it is a choice as well, because this could be a One Tree Hill, angst ridden and over the top. But the choice he makes to deliver this in this almost prayer like, almost flat emotion tone at some place. Have you come here for forgiveness? It's just real kind of, it's just
Right.
it's low key. It's low key. This is not, my guts are hanging out. Ah.
Will it make it easier on you now? You've got someone to blame. I mean, and something else that I think. So you say love is a temple, love a higher law. Love is a temple, love the higher law. And maybe this is me projecting, but I think this is the key component of the song and coming up, because there's a key change, I believe, right here. You ask me to enter, boom, then there's a key change, but then you make me crawl, and I can't be holding on to what you got when all you got is hurt. Boom, we go back into the original key. I believe that's what happens here. So they separate this snippet of a lyric, which I think is a brilliant lyric in and of itself, and they accent that with a key change.
You think those details are not intentional, you're wrong.
Right.
They are. That's
It
next
is. It's
level
next
sound
level
engineering, writing and sound engineering, because those guys, they know the rhythms that they work together with. These two guys, Lanois and Eno. It's the third time they've worked together, right? And
You're absolutely right. I could camp out on this song. This is a podcast in and of itself, and arguably, I could make an argument this is the best song in their catalog. I don't know that I would buy it if I made that argument, but I can make it.
that's the thing. It's not a matter of prove it. It's a matter of, is that in the most overused cliche in sports? Arguably, it is. It's
Is it special?
arguably right. It's arguably the best song that they've recorded, and arguably that's.
But it's not cheesy. That's what makes this song so good.
Yeah.
Is they convey something that's very basic, and that is the disunity between one entity and another. And they do it in a way, they convey something that's so universal in a way that's so unique.
And it's not necessarily about failure, because many times,
Right.
think
right,
about it.
you're
Many
right.
times I feel disconnected from my spouse. Okay. And I feel like, well, we are one because we're married, we're unified, we're a couple, we're married,
Right.
we're one, but we are not the same. I feel so distant. And this is universal, man. If you're married, I mean, this is a universal truth that people are different. And so you have the right to feel distant from your spouse, from your significant other. And that's not a failure. That's just being human. And then that's carried throughout this song, that this is about love and loss. Not always both of those. Sometimes the love and the distance is just what goes into being a couple. Okay. But
Go ahead.
But it comes back to, we get to carry each other, not have to. And again, you don't have to do anything.
Right.
You get to. And so if you choose to stay in this relationship where there is distance and it's not perfection, it's love and distance there. The loss is that sometimes you lose that connection. That is reality, man. I mean, it's just, why pretend? Everybody does that. Everybody goes through that. And then also think about this. Let me take it one step further. It could be universal love and lost, family bonds, father, son, husband, wife, husband, whatever. It could be anything like that. Also, it could be one body, many parts, as written by the Apostle Paul in Romans, about one, but we're not the same. Now, this could be just a fancy little trip over here to the side, but it still applies. It still applies that we are one and we're not the same. Now, I don't think that we're going to hear this on a Sunday morning, in the cantata, talking about the church is one body, many parts. We're one, we're not the same. But it almost could be. I mean,
it's like a cynical view of
it is. It's cynical,
truth, right?
But that truth is still there because the Apostle Paul was writing about the church, which is composed, as we know, of human people. We fulfill different roles in the church, in life, because we're all different and we have distance between us, and there's love and loss, and we're one, but we're not the same.
This song was very important in the evolution of the album. And the people that are listening to this may already know this because they're probably pretty savvy YouTube people. This song was birthed out of a song called Sick Puppy, which became Mysterious Ways. So they extracted the second bridge of Sick Puppy / Mysterious Ways and then said, whoa, this is good. What can we do with this? This belongs out on its own. And then they very quickly extracted that out and developed it as one. And I mean, very quickly. It happened within, they had the basic format of this song within 30 or 45 minutes. They at least came out of the Berlin sessions knowing we've got something that we can hang our hat on.
And it happened to be the song about being one and not the same, but we carry each other. And that makes it a great story about how the band was saved and lives to tell about it. But it's funny, we talked about Berlin being the way this was birthed. There was only a couple of songs that survived or came from Berlin. And one of them was One. I mean, that's a great story that this song is the way they got through, or that it represents the decision to stick together and keep trying, because they left and went somewhere else to record. I forget where they went.
Dublin. They went back to Dublin to record after Berlin.
It's a musical journey.
And for those who doubt that we could not do an entire podcast on this one song, we have essentially done an entire podcast on this one song.
Yeah, no doubt.
Here's an interesting tidbit. Eno didn't like this song.
Well, wonder why.
Maybe it was too succinct. Maybe it was too direct. Maybe it lacked an overall greater ambience or theme. I don't know.
I mean, it was too teric, and he wanted it to be esoteric.
Right. Exactly. That's well put. Right. That's speculative, but I think that's a sensible hypothesis. And we'll go with it.
That's good. Yeah.
And it is deceptively masterful. If you look at this song and just give it a cursory examination, you're missing so much about this song.
If you just had one chance to know something about U2.
No pun intended.
Well, see, when you say no pun intended, really what you're saying is check out that pun.
That's right.
I mean, really, if there's no pun intended.
That's right.
Why say
right.
Okay. I was just saying. Yeah. I mean, this is absolutely representative of not just this era, not just this album, not just this reincarnation of the band, but come on. It is a masterwork of writing, and it's delivered perfectly.
I hate to do this, but we must move on to track 4, a song called Unto the End of the World.
In the garden, I was playing the tarp. I kissed your lips and broke your heart. You were acting like it was the end of the world.
Okay, I like it, and I've always liked it. I've gone through stages of liking it more, and then like recently, preparing for this discussion, I really, really love it. Okay. And there's
Yep.
so many. You mentioned a minute ago that there are spiritual things that are kind of in between the lines, or there's so much biblical allusion there, alluding to passages and images and things that are just, they're thrown in there. Not even, however, this one is pretty blatant, pretty out there. This is Jesus and Judas. This is the story of the betrayal of Christ, and the themes here, the redemption and forgiveness, the fight between the carnal and spiritual, all of those things. Even if you don't dissect it from that point of view to say, well, what is he saying here? Is he saying that Jesus did this and Judas did that? I don't know, man. It's just exploring the dynamic of that relationship and of the choices that were made there and the implications of it, and just reflecting on it. It's not saying, here's the deal about it. It's reflecting on it.
And you're right. This song there's a lot of hidden stuff in this album, a lot of hidden stuff. This is actually one of those songs where I don't think there's a lot of hidden gems here. And however, having said that, and you and I have talked about this before, my interpretation of this has always been, this is my interpretation. So whether other people like it or not, I've always envisioned this as, again, this album was written at a time where Edge was going through a very painful divorce. I think this song has almost like this double helix interconnection of a theme of, on one hand, you've got Jesus and Judas, and on the other hand, you've got the man and the woman. And those seem to cross over at different points in this song, almost to where they're indistinguishable, to where you could take what he's saying to Judas, or what Judas is saying to him, and almost flip that around and look at it as what a man is saying to a woman, or a woman is saying to man, in the middle of a contentious relationship.
It's a double helix. They're inextricable.
It's a double helix. You're absolutely right. I mentally envision that when I hear this song. I do. I see a helix in my head when I hear this.
You know, there was a crappy cheese 80s metal band called Helix.
I vaguely remember that. Yes. We should podcast that sometime. War, maybe.
So yeah, you're exactly right. It does kind of intertwine the contemporary romantic relationship. And Jesus and Judas has been probably the most speculated upon relationship, from the Bible, or one of the most, because that is a fascinating deep dive into, like, wow, that's a different podcast. But I mean, that whole idea of throwing that into this song, it takes some stones right there.
And I think that, and I'm using this to prove my point, my opinion. 1, 2, 3, fourth line. We're as close as a bride and groom. He's establishing a bride and groom relationship right off the bat. Yeah. Now, I understand the biblical perspective of the bride and the groom, the church, Christ, and so forth. But he's using a bride and groom right off the bat, almost to plant that seed out there that, yeah, you've got the Jesus Judas component, but you've also got a bride and groom component.
A literal bride and groom.
A literal bride and groom component that's going to present itself, if you're paying attention throughout this song. You lead me on with those innocent eyes. In the garden, I was playing the tart, waves of regret, waves of joy. Some of this stuff, it has double meaning. I haven't seen you in quite a while. Last time we met was a low-lit room. And there's some sensuality involved there.
I kissed your lips and broke your heart.
I kissed your, right. While there are some things here that are a bit more, can be extracted as being a bit more, quote unquote, biblical. I think there are some things here that you can take and say, you know what? That's a man and a woman. And particularly if the title of the album, Attention Baby, Yeah.
So I love the music as well. And it has this grinding, again, that guitar tone is something we hadn't heard before, not specifically like that. And it has this, I heard somebody say one time, it sounds like it's got the sense of floating underwater. It has this kind of swirling, kind of layered sound. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Particularly in the bridge, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's got this texture, and I like kind of the laid back vocal style. Again, man, throughout this record, Bono is not trying to do too much. Another sports cliche. but he is not trying too hard. It's the anti-Joshua Tree vocal style. He's kind of laconic. He's just kind of like, in my dream, drowning with sorrow. And he delivers it, but it's perfect. It's perfect. So let me draw your attention to this last verse. In my dream, I was drowning my sorrows, but my sorrows, they learned to swim. Do you love that line or what?
There are parts of this song that confound me.
Let me go on.
Go on.
Surrounding me, going down on me, spilling over the brim. Waves of regret, waves of joy. I reached out for the one I tried to destroy. You said you'd wait till the end of the world. Drowning my sorrows, but my sorrows, I learned to swim. I thought when I first heard that was the most clever thing I ever. That was fantastic. He's a genius.
It's good songwriting. Yeah.
But come to find out, that's not his quote. He's doing a play on a quote from Frida Kahlo, the Mexican artist.
Well, you're digging deep now.
Well,
you're digging deep. You're going into the Mexican authors.
I mean, this is a quote that, and I don't think anybody ever tried to claim, hey, Bono wrote that. But he also, he knows when to use other people's words. And
Yeah.
that is perfect. My sorrows, they learn to swim. Her quote is a little more flowery and it goes on, but he's just kind of grabbing that piece of it. And then, man, to have the guts to say, my sorrows surrounded me, going down on me. There is this sexual aspect of this album that is kind of just lurking under the surface, and every song has kind of a little piece of sexuality. And this one you're right. It's a human sexual relationship there for sure. And then that so picturesque, so descriptive, waves of regret and not regret.
That's a nice piece right there. Waves of regret and waves of joy.
But hear me on that. It's not waves of regret like we pronounce the word regret. It's waves of regret. He accentuates the re, and that's poetic license because it's not correct. But because he makes that choice, it's like waves of regret, waves of joy. It's better that way. So, and you're right, the dichotomy of like, is it waves of regret, waves of joy? It's both extremes. So that's a human relationship. And then the very next line, it's Christ and Judas, because Judas reaches out for the one that I tried to destroy.
It's the double helix.
It's the double helix.
It's the double helix. It is. And again, this is one of those songs where, I'm latching on to in 1996 when I'm moving into an apartment on my own with nothing but a mattress and a couple other things. And she's moved on to do her own thing. So these are things that I'm grappling with. Waves of regret and waves of joy.
Yeah.
You regret. So there's this period where you regret what has happened, but you're joyful that it's over because the pain is behind you.
Right. A relief. Yeah.
And I reached out for the one I tried to destroy. That goes on because that's all you've known. You're reaching out for this catharsis effect, and you're reaching out to the person that's looking to destroy you. And that's all you've known. And that's a mindset you have to break out of.
And that you actually, out of your own pain and defense mechanism, are trying to destroy yourself in a sense.
Yes.
You're at least trying to destroy what they represent in your life.
You said you'd wait till the end of the world. You said you'd wait till the end of the world. That is until death do us part.
That's right. That's the same. Yep.
It's the same component.
Man, that's a helix right there. I never got this much. Double helix.
Now, if you want to take this a bit more superficially, verse 1 is about the Last Supper. Verse 2 is about Judas identifying Jesus to the guards with a kiss.
Right.
And then the third verse is Judas offering himself out of guilt and shame. I get that. I understand that interpretation. I'm taking the creative license of not looking at it quite that way.
But it's not that far to go. It's not a license to jump too far because it's right there. It's completely intertwined. That's what makes this next level songwriting, because he's able to weave those together without saying verse 1 is about Jesus, verse 2 is about people, because that's a structure.
Right.
You're like verse 1, 2, and 3 in a bridge, and you're like, because verse 1 is when I mean, that is the classic formula and structure for songwriting. You're
Right.
like, scenario A, scenario B, then a bridge, scenario C, climax, chorus, repeat, fade. So, all right. Who's going to ride your wild horses? Next track. What do you got?
First of all, the cello intro is gorgeous. I've always loved that intro.
You're dangerous, 'cause you're honest. You're dangerous, you don't know what you want. Where you left my heart, empty as a vacant lot. For any spirit to haunt.
It's weird because I think this is one of the, there's a part of me that says, okay, this is one of the weaker songs on the album, but you gotta really like it.
Yeah.
There are some parts of this song where I go, can we still be friends? That's kind of weak. Could he have not done better than that? And then I go down to Under the Trees, the river laughing at you and me, hallelujah. Heaven's
Yeah.
white rose, the doors you open, I just can't close. And I go, well, he kind of redeemed himself for that little
I
be
mean,
friends bit. Who's gonna, I always like this. I don't know why. I think it's because it's Old English, and I like the fact that he throws it in. But the very, very last line, and you kind of have to turn up the volume. Who's going to tame the heart of thee? Why did he suddenly in the last verse go to Old English style?
I think that there's one before that. Who's going to
is there?
fall? Who's going to fall at the foot of thee?
Oh, you're right. Yep.
Yeah, but I
stand
wrote
corrected.
that down also as an interesting thought too. Then I'm like, why make that choice? I think it's on purpose to stylize it to be like that he's elevating this person to the queen level there of like who will fall at thine foot, and to genuflect as if you are this queen, this to be admired, and almost sarcastically. Who knows? But I think it's a great choice there.
And to piggyback on that, so the White Rose is actually depicted as paradise by Dante.
Yeah.
So you're going back there. There's there are these kind of old English, old school, I don't know, Renaissance / whatever references in this song. And if you kind of lay that against the cello intro, which is a very kind of a classical instrument, maybe this has that sort of, maybe it's more kind of European / Berlin-esque in that sense.
It definitely, but it also pulls you back into
old Europe.
But it pulls you back into the modern world because they're like, hey, I took a drive in the dirty rain.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, they're in this. I mean, what is that? What picture does that paint? Oh, I'm snapped back to modern day Berlin.
The deeper I spin, the hunter will sin for your ivory skin. That's good stuff.
That's good stuff.
The hunter will sin for your ivory skin is great imagery.
That is great. And the more you think about that, it's the selling of your own mortal soul for the sake of worldly possessions, ivory skin being what you can achieve or accomplish or accumulate in this life, and will sell your own soul for achieving. Again, is this self-referential to being a rock star or not? Or is it an everyday kind of thing?
Or is it merely the fact that, there's sexual components in this album? I think this stands kind of as another example of that. Will the hunter sin for your ivory skin? I think there's something to be said for that interpretation of it being another sexual component.
There's so many moments of greatness on this album that when a simple, really good song appears like this, you're like, that's not my favorite. But I mean, if this was somewhere else, this would be a great song. Okay.
Well, and I actually really like the song, even though I look at it and I think I said this earlier, that I look at it and go, some of the songwriting stuff. And then you and I start to break it down and I go, you know what? This is a better song than I thought it was.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why we're doing this podcast, which is, by the way, Rock and Roll Doggies. Jason Acquisto here, Don Pardue, the Smurf. You're over in North Carolina, and I'm in Indianapolis, and we're just two lifelong friends, U2 nerds. We're breaking down music that's been important in our lives, and U2 is what we're doing now, piece by piece. A piece of glass left there on the beach. I think the imagery is really good in this song too. We're on Achtung Baby, and this is Who's Gonna Ride Your Wild Horses. My heart empty as a vacant lot, a piece of glass in the beach. I mean, these are good, strong images of these difficult, heart-wrenching situations. Drown in your blue sea, and these are difficult, often disastrous relationships. Edge had his marriage falling apart, and just all of these different things happening, and we're part of it with this kind of imagery and this kind of writing.
Yeah, I got nothing more to add on that one.
Come on now, love. All right, so moving on to track 6, So Cruel.
You say in love there are no rules. Love, sweetheart, you're so cruel.
Your thoughts?
I think it's one of the lesser tracks on the album. It's only been played four. I'm not saying, again, you kind of keep it against, the backdrop of other songs on the album.
Yeah.
I mean, we just came off of one and until the end of the world. So the standard's pretty high.
Yeah.
It's only been played 4 times and has not been played live since 92.
Interesting.
It's a little bit like one in the fact that it cuts to the chase. There's less importance or less emphasis on the sonic part of this, particularly when you go into the next song, The Fly, because it's bombastic sonically.
Yeah,
I think though that it's one of the lesser known songs on the album, but I think that in a strange way, it's kind of the thematic centerpiece of the album. If you were to take away Achtung Baby as a title, you could insert So Cruel as a great title for the album.
Wow. Yeah, that's a strong statement. I don't disagree with that. That's interesting. I initially, it was not my favorite. And I have grown to not just love this song, and I don't necessarily love like listening to it over and over. It's not like it's aesthetically my favorite, but I have grown to love what it represents. And I think it's some of the best writing.
That's good writing.
I think it's some of the best writing about human relationships that Bono has ever done. I'm in the moment right now with I'm on a honeymoon with this song, so it might be a little bit hyperbolic about it, but I think it's some of the best, strongest writing. It's sadness. It's the end of a relationship. Again, probably about Edge. I love the way that it slows down. Again, it's like the second time the album has slowed down. The drums are really strong, and it's got this, somebody called it a stutter step drum beat. It's not quite a shuffle. It's kind of a half shuffle, but it's kind of got that stutter step. It's got some of the strongest lyrics and just like little one-offs, like, she wears my love like a see-through dress. Come on. I mean, that's either something off of the cover of a dime store trashy romantic novel, or that's just great writing. And then, when you get into things like, I disappeared in you, you disappeared from me, I gave you everything you ever wanted, it wasn't what you wanted. That's strong brokenness right there.
I think for me, and this is merely personal preference, but I don't think that the melody grabbed me enough to be able to camp out on this song to any great degree like I would have, say, one. But there's a lot of meat in this song. A couple things that kind of grabbed me. Her lips say one thing, but her movement's something else.
Yeah.
I believe that's correct. The other thing that is interesting is that her skin is pale like God's only dove. Is that right?
Yeah.
Her skin is pale like God's only dove. Well, we just heard about the 100 sins for your ivory skin.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of a link there between what's being conveyed in this song versus what's being portrayed in the previous song. And I don't think that's coincidence.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. The ivory, the dove, the purity, that whole symbolism, very biblical and very intentional. Another phrase that I came to appreciate so much lately in the way it's delivered. I might have never understood this before until recently. Her heart is racing. You can't keep up. The night is bleeding like a cut. Between the horses of love and lust, we are trampled underfoot. The way he delivers that is so.
He camps out on lust.
Yep. And that is a great line from this song.
No, he camps out on love, I guess, between the horses.
But just write that down. Between the horses of love and lust, we are trampled underfoot. I mean, there's just these little nuggets throughout the song.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
You don't know
if
fear.
Her heart is racing. You can't keep up.
Oh, I know. Her heart is racing.
Right. Not your heart, but her heart.
Yeah. So again, it comes down to choices. He chose to make it about what if it's her heart that's racing? You don't know if it's fear or desire, danger, the drug that takes you higher. Head in heaven, fingers in the mire. Now, head in heaven, fingers in the mire. That sounds to me like I still haven't found what I'm looking for. It's a callback to that kind of, duality of like living. I've done both things. I've had spoken with the tongue of angels and have held the hand of the devil. I've had my head in heaven, but my fingers were in the mire. You have lived in both extremes.
The miry clay.
The miry clay. Yeah. But mire is a great choice there because it's a super biblical word. And you're like, it doesn't come off as phony. It just comes off as just good. Again, good writing. I'm like you, though. This song never held me musically enough to maybe appreciate it as much until I looked at the word on the page and began to love it.
So he closes out with, "Oh, love, you say in love, there are no rules." And then he repeats, "Oh, love, sweetheart, you're so cruel." And then he comes back and says, "Oh, love, to stay with you, I'd be a fool." So it's a repetition. On one hand, he's saying, you say in love, there are no rules. And then the next phrase in the same spot, he's saying, to stay with you, I'd be a fool. If there are no rules, then I'd be a fool to stay with someone where there are no rules.
Right. Again, chaotic.
You say in love, there are no rules.
This is Rock and Roll Doggies, our podcast. I couldn't be happier to be talking about Achtung Baby with my friend Don Pardue. My name is Jason Acquisto. That brings us to the end of side one. If you're listening to it on an album, God bless you. This would be the end of side one. Side two side one on a cassette, I guess, too. We'll come back with side two on the next episode. Anything else you want to add? Of course, next episode will include our ratings and our awards for the best track and most underrated track and best lyrics. Any final thoughts on this episode?
No, but other than this is a masterpiece of an album in terms of songwriting and production and artistic value, it is primo. And I don't use those three descriptors as throwaway adjectives. It's a bona fide masterpiece in many different ways.
Bona fide. And I think you're right. You are not one to be superfluously hyperbolic. Okay.
I'll go with that.
All right. Take us home, bro.
All righty, folks. Thanks for logging on and listening to our wonderful thoughts on one of the most influential bands of the modern era. Be sure to follow us at Rock and Roll Doggies on Instagram and on Twitter at Roll Doggies for details about our next podcast and other juicy tidbits as we take a chronological journey through the discography of U2. Until we connect again, good night, everybody.
No, it's a musical journey.